the anchor of yesterday. In a small town nestled along the fierce Missouri River, where ancient willow trees cast their shadows over silty, turbulent waters, lived a man named Arthur. At over 60 years old, his face was a map of time's deep ridges, marking countless seasons of storms. Arthur was a veteran boatman. He had spent his life guiding thousands safely across the river, carving through the most treacherous eddies. Yet, there remained a painful paradox. While he could save so many strangers, he could not save his own soul. 15 years ago, on this very stretch of water, a horrific boating accident claimed the life of his only son. Since that fateful day, Arthur had ceased to truly live. He shackled himself to a life sentence of guilt that no court had ever decreed. Every night, as darkness shrouded the town, the sound of water lapping against the hull was no longer a peaceful lullaby. It became a heart-wrenching reproach. Why wasn't it me? If only I had been faster. He lived like a ghost within his own home. Arthur's smile had withered long ago, replaced by a somber gaze always fixed toward the downstream current. His heart was heavy, as if carrying a colossal iron anchor, rusted by the years, relentlessly dragging him toward the dark depths of remorse. To Arthur, the river was no longer a source of life, but an open grave where he imprisoned himself among the shattered fragments of yesterday. Autumn in Missouri brought a biting chill and winds that whipped through dry, scorched grasslands. Arthur sat on a decaying wooden pier, his clouded, soulless eyes staring into the swirling vortex of the water. The stones of regret in his heart seemed to grow heavier as the anniversary of his son's passing drew near. He didn't hear the soft footsteps approaching until a small, warm hand touched his rough, calloused palm. It was Grace, his 7-year-old granddaughter with hair as golden as autumn sunlight. Grace was the only embodiment of joy left in the family, but for a long time, Arthur had unwittingly built a wall between them, fearing that love would only prolong the pain. Grace looked at her grandfather, her bright blue eyes devoid of judgment, filled only with pure curiosity. She noticed him clutching a worn piece of wood, a toy his son had cherished years ago. "Grandpa," Grace whispered, her voice as clear as wind chimes in the still air. "Why does it always look like you're carrying the whole river on your back?" Arthur sighed, a heavy expiration from the depths of his lungs. "I'm holding on to memories, Grace. I'm holding on to yesterday, because I'm afraid if I let go, your father will disappear forever." Grace remained silent for a long time, tilting her head to watch the river rushing beneath the pier, then looked back at her grandfather's trembling hands. She said something Arthur would never forget. "Grandpa, if you're busy using both hands to hold on to yesterday, how will you have any hands left to hold mine today?" Those words struck like lightning, tearing through the gray skies of Arthur's mind. His chest tightened. For 15 years, he had prided himself on being a loyal father because he never let the pain fade. But a bitter truth emerged. He had spent all his strength embracing a ghost, and in the process, he had abandoned the living presence right in front of him. His hands were indeed too busy with the anchor of the past to shelter the granddaughter who needed him most. A rare tear traced a path down the boatman's weathered cheek, falling onto the rotting wood and vanishing into nothingness. Following Grace's question, a vast silence enveloped the pier. Arthur sat there, motionless as a wooden statue, but inside him raged a flood of new realization. Grace had run off to chase a yellow butterfly, leaving him alone to face the silty red Missouri. That night, Arthur did not return home early. He stayed by the riverbank, quietly observing the flow he thought he had known his entire life. Under the silver moonlight, the Missouri River appeared as a great living entity. Arthur realized a simple yet brutal truth. The river never holds on to anything. Dry branches, pebbles, or even his own painful memories, the river tirelessly swept them all downstream. It never stopped to mourn a rotting log or regret a wave that shattered against the rocks. The river understood that to maintain its life and power, it had to move on. Arthur reached down and picked up a smooth black stone at his feet. He realized his torments of the past 15 years were exactly like this stone. He had handpicked each one, piling them onto the boat of his life, believing it was the only way to keep his son's memory from being washed away. But he was wrong. Those stones didn't bring his son back. They only made his boat heavier, making it unsteady and waiting to sink him with the slightest breeze. "I'm trying to do what the river has never done," Arthur whispered, his voice merging with the night wind. "I'm trying to force the water to stand still." He finally understood that honoring the departed is not about becoming a living tomb. To honor his son was to live the life his son had lost, to let the current of love continue through grace, not to freeze it in self-hatred. Arthur looked at the stone in his hand, then out at the rushing current. For the first time, he recognized that forgiving himself was not a betrayal of the past, but a liberation for the future. As the first light of dawn tinted the Missouri pink, Arthur stood up, his legs no longer trembling as they had the night before. He walked toward his old boat, but this time not to flee from reality. With a deep breath, Arthur took the black stone, the symbol of 15 years of agony, and hurled it into the heart of the river. A soft splash echoed, and the ripples spread before disappearing. The invisible anchor line had finally snapped. He walked toward the house where Grace was waiting. For the first time in over a decade, Arthur did not look at the ground in sorrow. He held his head high to meet the radiant sunlight. He understood. The past is a teacher to learn from, not a prison to dwell in. Forgiveness doesn't change what happened, but it certainly changes how we move forward. Arthur opened his arms wide, pulling Grace into a hug. He felt the warmth of the present, the sweetness of life, and a tranquility he had never known. His boat was light now, ready to sail upon new waters. For he had learned the greatest lesson of all. To truly love someone on the other side, one must first learn to love oneself on this side. The wisdom: life is too short to be held hostage by old mistakes. Learn to let go of the heavy stones, so your boat can float freely upon the currents of hope and peace.